we well? Are we all well? Thank you for joining me. I do apologise for not going live in the last week or so. I was away with my summer job. I'm sure some of you saw my flop tests. It's my shtick, part of my thing, as I travel around the fabulous island of Ireland and other places too. I like to do the old flop test in the hotel rooms and show everyone how lovely the hotel rooms are, wherever I might go. And then, alas, while I was travelling around, I got the dreaded lurgy again, because there's every bug known to Christendom floating around out there. So alas, I got a nasty cold. So when I came home, I had to take to my bed, and I did not look in any fit state to go live. I can assure you, I look like boiled shite, as the saying goes. But anyway, since the evening is nice, bit of twilight beaming into my room, and because I haven't chatted to you for all so long, and because I have something on my mind, I thought I would get it off, as it were, both my mind and my chest, as it were, and I'm going to talk about Baby Reindeer. Now, for those of you who haven't heard about it yet, Baby Reindeer is a series on Netflix streaming service, and it's one of those things where popular culture started to bleed spoilers into my social media timelines, and people started talking about it on bloody morning shows and things, and the bloody thing was seemingly unavoidable. So I thought, well, I might as well have a gander at it and see what it's like, since it's supposed to be so riveting. Well, riveting it was. However, I take issue with the entire premise of Baby Reindeer. I take issue with Richard Gadd's cynical exploitation of a woman who is severely mentally ill, and I take issue with the further exploitation of said woman with mental health issues by people such as Piers Morgan, who should know better, but of course continues to be horrible and will do anything just to remain in the news himself, because he makes himself the issue rather than topics of the day. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the series Baby Reindeer, it is meant to be a true story, told from the point of view of Richard Gadd, who wrote, starred in, directed, and he adapted it from his own play. It's well written and it's well acted. However, the entire premise is, well, it's just wrong. It's wrong. From the instant the antagonist, which is in the series, her name is Martha. In real life, the poor woman's name is Fiona Harvey. From the instant she appears in the pub where Richard Gadd works, she is the subject of cruelty and laughter and pointing because she's really, really unwell mentally. And as well as being unwell mentally, she's also plus size, as am I. So she's body shamed. There's a scene, for instance, where she sends unsolicited selfies because she has descended into stalking because the person she is stalking keeps encouraging her because it flatters him to have her around, and he refuses to report her because he enjoys having her around, because he is getting off on the story. Like, you know, some people just like drama, and he thinks he's the victim. He's not the victim. Richard Gadd is not the victim in Baby Reindeer. The victim is a poor woman who is very, very ill and who is being laughed at and exploited by Richard Gadd in order to make himself rich and famous. So in the series, there's a scene where the character Martha sends Richard Gadd's character Donnie. He's meant to be a comedian. Sends him an unsolicited selfie of herself in like granny undies and a bra. And everyone's meant to go, ew, yuck, gross, well, I look like her. While I don't send out unsolicited selfies, it's true, there are very many people who do solicit photographs of me. And I've been quite unwell in the past because I have PTSD and I've battled depression nearly my entire adult life. And it was very upsetting to see this woman basically laughed at and pointed at. There's all too much of it about people laughing and pointing at those who are unwell. For instance, that dreadful, dreadful series, Hoarders. Now, I've only ever watched a couple of episodes of Hoarders. This was back, oh my goodness, ages ago, 10 years ago, Hoarders started coming out. And everyone said, oh my goodness, did you see last night's episode of Hoarders? You wouldn't believe it. And I was living in a country town where there was only free-to-air telly. There was nothing else on, so I sat down and watched half an episode. And I was extremely upset to see that everyone was just victimising someone who was clearly unwell and depressed. That's what hoarding is. Hoarding is like a symptom of like trauma and depression and paranoia often, and lots of like borderline personality disorder. There's many, many reasons why people let their houses go and become derelict, or they continue to live in them in squalor. Guilty of it myself because I've been dreadfully unwell. And it's dreadful to think that television stations will just come along and make a program and exploit the mentally ill, and it's just awful to see everyone in those streets like just piling on, pointing and being horrible and gossiping and complaining about real estate values and going out like with their power tools at 8 o'clock in the morning to trim their hedges while pointedly looking over the fence at someone who's unwell and timid and too shy to even come out anymore to face the neighbours because they're such cunts. I can relate only too well to that, believe me. But there was one episode of Hoarders. There was one episode of Hoarders which cheered me, which reminded me that there are people who practice instead of preach. And I'm very glad that of the 2 episodes of Hoarders that I watched, one of them was the nice one in which one of the neighbours said, why don't we all pitch in and help the poor, hermit who was living in the Hoarder's house? So he hired a skip and he got in there himself and he helped clear out the rubbish and he helped take away the car wreck that was in his front yard, and he actually, he stepped up. He did the manly thing, but most importantly, he did the kind thing. Now, you might want to call it Christian values, you might want to call it Buddhist values, you can just call it kindness or decent impulse of philanthropy and, act local, think global. What an act of kindness to actually, instead of just writing letters to the council or ringing the council anonymously to put in complaints against your neighbours, have the guts to actually step up to their front door and knock on it and say, would you like us to help? And if they don't, have the compassion enough to turn away and not invade their privacy. Anyway, so back to Baby Reindeer, which is another example of misogyny and exploitation of the mentally unwell. What makes it even worse? The exploitation of Fiona Harvey's story. Because Fiona Harvey, who is the real life Martha from Baby Reindeer, she's clearly unwell, and people who you would think would know better, all these millennials who are YouTubers who make big fellows of themselves by saying, I'm here for mental health awareness. They go on camera every day, every couple of weeks and go, I'm so sorry guys, I'm struggling, it's time to be honest about my mental health, I've changed my meds, this is that. They're always like, it's very important that everyone understands mental health, go and raise this. They're always bloody sponsored by various mental health apps and all that sort of thing. And then they jump on the Baby Reindeer bandwagon and have clickbait titles like, the real Baby Reindeer is crazy. Like, the character Martha isn't the baby reindeer. The character Martha has a baby reindeer. And in real life, poor Fiona Harvey confessed all of her secrets and all of her mental anguish to Richard Gadd. And he listened. And he fed her paranoia and he fed her fatal attraction, and he enjoyed the hell out of it and kept giving her mixed signals all the way through. And then he utterly betrayed her by barely bothering, he changed her name but didn't change anything else. I mean, he couldn't even change the name Baby Reindeer. The real woman in the real life has a baby reindeer toy. He lacked the imagination to call it a rubber cow, just to take it a little bit further away, which makes you think that he's a malicious narcissist, as well as an attention seeker who's trying to portray himself as a victim. And as for throwing the old, transsexual subplot in there, again, I can't help but feel that's just a cynical exploitation of, the topic of the times. I am all for LGBTQ rights. I am the B in LGBTQ, as I have said for years and years. And I have always been a trans ally. I mean, I come from Australia. Have you seen Priscilla Queen of the Desert? I used to work in a sex shop and in a peep show. Do you think I've it's the first time I've encountered transsexuals and been on their side. But I can't help but think that Richard Gadd is really just put together a hodgepodge of topicality in order to attract every facet of the lowest common denominator audience. But most particularly, I think he gathered all those males that like to point and laugh at middle-aged women who aren't thin. And there's far too many of those, wouldn't you say? It's like society can be judged on the way you treat the most vulnerable. Well, I feel Baby Reindeer is a condemnation not only of Mr. Gadd, like he acted well, he wrote well, he directed well, but it was very superficial and it was very cruel. And it really is just exploiting someone else's misery for his gain. It's just another white male standing on the stage collecting an award at the expense of someone else and portraying himself as a victim. Poor Bubby was stalked. Well, there are millions of women who are actually stalked and murdered by their male partners. One a week in Britain. And I don't think Mr. Gadd was ever in any danger from Fiona Harvey. Now, she does have a criminal history and she has been caught in falsehoods, but that's because she's unwell. Can we not give some grace to the mentally unwell? Borderline personality disorder tends to make people devious when they're having a psychotic episode, but they don't know right from wrong. They literally don't know right from wrong. Richard Gadd knows right from wrong, I'm sure. So I'm sure he put a lot of thought into whether he was going to change that storyline enough so that Fiona Harvey was not tracked down and made to suffer further. Never mind everyone else who might be quite mentally well, but looks like Fiona Harvey. I can only imagine that how many women are sitting on a bus right now hearing men behind them snigger about them looking like Martha, because now he's made everyone who looks like the actor who played Martha, who clearly, by the way, has lipedema like myself, set us back about 20 years. It's like, I was utterly appalled. The entire series is completely heartbreaking from start to finish, utterly heartbreaking. And it was only when I watched an interview that people said, it's a comedy. They built it as a comedy. And I thought, how sick must you be to laugh at any of this? How sick must you be? How cruel must you be to laugh at a woman who is so unwell that she sits at a bus stop for 3 days, freezing to death, because the only person that she thinks might help her or be her friend is in the house opposite, and she doesn't know what else to do because she's desperately unwell. But I think it's condemnation not only of Richard Gadd, but also of society and the healthcare service, social services. If it's all as true as he says, why is this woman not already able to access decent mental health services? Obviously she's a danger to herself and she's a danger to society. It's not okay to stalk people, obviously, but she needs real help. like she needs to be sectioned, dare I say it, is the old term. She needs to be admitted involuntarily for herself, but there's just apparently no care for the vulnerable among society anymore, particularly in the UK, where the NHS has crumbled and pensioners are freezing to death their own flats. Poor Martha, aka Fiona Harvey, just didn't have much of a chance. The real Fiona Harvey is now suing Netflix for millions because her life story has been held up to ridicule by the entire planet. I can't say I blame her. I don't think she's going to win because she's not well enough to win, and she'll only, I'm afraid, bring more public ridicule, as did Amber Heard. Amber Heard is clearly not a nice person. But Amber Heard has borderline personality disorder. That makes you behave as though you're not a very nice person. She has a mental illness. And again, the entire world jumps on the bandwagon and demonises Amber Heard, and no one ever says, perhaps Johnny Depp should not have married a girl who was not even born when he first became famous and a millionaire. And, you know, no fool like an old fool, but again, if they're young and they're white and they're skinny, they are to be admired and worshipped. And if they're my age and my shape, and life's knocked them around a bit and left them with shaky mental health, apparently they'll be despised and pointed at. But there's not even the community support for us to get better, is there? But oh well, that's my 2 bits on Baby Reindeer and Richard Gadd and poor Fiona Harvey. Well, Jessica What's-Her-Face did a lovely job of acting Fiona Harvey, but I still don't think it's terribly fair that anyone did, because they took her story and they made it shameful when she's really unwell. And sometimes, you know, when the balance of your mind is temporarily disturbed, you just cannot be held responsible for your own behaviour. And it's not a Christian and compassionate way to view anyone, I'm afraid, no matter how inconvenient Gadd may have been. All right, well, that's quite enough for now. Thank you all for tuning in to me. I am fat, I am mad, and I'm still doing it, thankfully. My name's Mama Duck. I especially thank all of you who bother to listen. I do read all of your comments, so please do feel to leave them. I will read them. And if they're very silly, I don't respond to them. But if they're sane, then you will get a reply. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Please share me far and wide. And go to my About page to look at my social media links, etc., etc. And I'll see you when you got nothing on.